Well, guys, as I mentioned
Butch,
earlier, I'm going to get to do a story from well, a past.
Butch,
Yes, I I hear something.
I just wanted to say
Oh,
it's Diane.
yes.
I'm in the car,
Okay.
and so there'll be a point where I'll probably switch and be in the house and switch
Okay.
to a different computer. So just to let you know, that'll be happening.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to be doing a story on Sunday from, a passage on Sunday from Colossians about the mystery of the church, Christ in us, the hope of glory. And it's actually when I agreed to preach this week, I didn't know what the passage was, and I think the mystery, the mysteries of God, I believe, are one of the great untapped doctrines of the church. I'm in an area where we have Southern Seminary, which is a great seminary, very Calvinistic, and they are pretty strident. I have a lot of friends who are very Arminian, and if you read the Arminian guys and you read the Calvinist guys, everybody's got everything spelled out to the last detail. And I'm just thinking, I don't think you can do that with God. There's just issues there that both sides are right and issues where both sides are wrong. And for little old me to try to put God in a box, I struggle with that sometimes. And so I think the aspect of the mystery, the mysterion of God is, I love just meditating on that and recognizing the fact that there's a lot I don't know. And for me, honestly, one of the things I'm most excited about heaven is the fact that we're going to get to spend eternity learning things about God. Like every day it's going to be something new, like, oh my goodness, that mind-blowing kind of discovery. And so as I've been focused on this passage this week, the Lord brought to mind another passage, the first occurrence of the church in the New Testament. And Jesus, he's been traveling with the disciples. He's got the 12 disciples. He uses an expression in this story called "Son of Man," which is a highly messianic title. It's very the Messiah is coming, and it's from the book of Daniel, and it's the name that Christ uses for himself a lot. There's also going to be the title the Christ, which just is the Messiah. When I first came to know the Lord, I had been raised up in a religious system that they talked about Jesus Christ. I always thought Christ was his last name, right? I really did. I just thought, that I hate to admit this. This just shows you how little I knew about Scripture. I just assumed that Joseph's last name was Christ. So, it was like I was Butch Vernon, Joseph Christ, and his son Jesus Christ. But the term Christ is the Anointed One or Messiah. And so also in this passage, there's something else I need to bring up in the introduction, and I can't remember it. So when I get to it,
and you can mention it.
Yeah, when I get to it, we'll mention it. Again, this is one of those, doesn't fit in the rules kind of thing, and I really don't care.
You don't either.
I don't freak out over that, and I don't see Andrew pulling out the coaching review sheet to ding me. So I'll just let it go. Well, so here's our story from God's word. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, so who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they answered and said, well, some say you're John the Baptist. And said, and others say that you're Elijah or one of the other prophets. Some say, well, some say you're Jeremiah. And Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, Simon, son of Jonah, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Oh, excuse me. My phone just, oh, can't get it off. Okay. But my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. And that's our story from God's word. Sorry about the background noise. I can't figure out how to get my phone off. I've got my ringer off, but for whatever reason, when I'm on the computer, it makes noise. So I'm going to get you guys to kind of help me retell this story. So when Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, do you remember what he did?
He asked the disciples a question, right?
Yeah, he asked the disciples a question and said, who do people say that I, and then he,
the Son of Man,
the Son of Man am. The disciples answered him and said, what?
John the Baptist.
Yeah,
some
John,
say,
Elijah.
Elijah.
some say you are Isaiah, some say you are Jeremiah.
Jeremiah or other
the
prophets.
prophet.
So just the four. So he had John the Baptist,
Elijah.
Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets.
Other prophet.
And then Jesus asked a second question.
Who do you say that I am?
Who do you say that I am?
Say that I am. And Peter said,
You are the
The Christ,
Christ.
you're
the Son of the living God.
the Son of the living God. And Jesus was, I mean, he uses a different name for Peter.
Peter, the son of Jonah.
Simon, son of Jonah. Yeah. He says what?
Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah.
You're blessed because
Flesh and
It's
blood,
not from the
That
flesh
I
and
revealed it to you.
my Father in heaven.
Oh, my Father in heaven, then.
my Father who is in heaven. And he said,
You are Peter.
and on
This rock.
This
rock, I'll build my
Church.
church.
and
The gates
of Hades will not
overpower.
prevail against it.
the gates of Hades will not overpower it. And some versions say prevail against it. So, the disciples have been with Jesus for a while now, and kind of learning his ways a little bit. I mean, what do you think? What do you think it might have been like for them when all of a sudden he stops and he asks them a question? I mean, what do you think that might have felt like for them at this point?
We're getting set up.
of
We're getting set up.
Yeah, getting set up.
We're going to look like a bunch of dummies after this question.
What else?
What do you mean? Like, what can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, for the disciples, they've been living with Jesus for a while now. And so he's asked them a lot of questions and then built on those questions up to this point. So what might it have been like to be one of the disciples and all of a sudden have Jesus just stop everything and ask you as a group a question?
Well, I think partly he is inviting them to share what they may hear that he doesn't actually hear.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I
Because
like that.
they're out, they're out in the crowds and stuff. So they probably often hear some things that people are a little reluctant to say within hearing distance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Cheryl.
Maybe they thought, this is gonna be an important question, because he's walking along and then he just stops. It's not like a chat,
Yeah.
Oh. It's like he stops and then this is like a real important question.
Well, I think they also have to decide, that Jesus has his critics. So, are they going to include the unflattering ones as well? Well, some say son of Beelzebub or
Yeah.
crackpot.
Yeah.
Some did say that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at the first part of this story. So, as Jesus comes into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples a question and said, "Who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And the disciples said, some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Elijah, some say you're Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. And Jesus said, well, okay, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then he said, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood didn't give this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. So we'll just stop right there. So do you think Jesus is just like, he's losing a little confidence, he's had a bad day, and he wants to hear how great people think he is?
Yeah.
No.
I got the speaker on.
That's what I was thinking. Like, it feels like a question that not Jesus wouldn't. It feels like Jesus never cared what other people think of him.
Yeah.
And then now he's asking, like, what do other people think of me? It's a strange question coming from Jesus.
It is a little awkward for us, right? We see everything about Jesus. Oh, who do people say that I am?
I think he's also, he wants to hear how much of what he's been doing is getting through to them. So clarify, he wants a little clarification on, are you guys seeing, who I am? And having them verbalize it, which is important. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Johnny.
By the way, he answered to Peter, I think he was trying to see if they are actually like learning how to hear God's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and I do think we will see that in just a minute. But in this first question, where he's asking, who do people say?
I think he wants a sondeo, to find out, like an echo, like a sonar. Let's find out what's out there.
Okay.
Let's find out what's out there. I'm kind of interested in how well my message is being received. I'm not going to hear the truth from a lot of people, but maybe they'll tell you guys something. So who are people saying that I am?
Like a survey.
A survey. Thank you so much for that English word.
Well, and I like what Diane said, that so they said, well, he named John the Baptist, who now we think of as a prophet, but at that time still kind of, they're still kind of working out who he was. He hadn't been dead long at that point, or Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. I find it interesting that they didn't bring up, well, they say you're demon possessed, or that you're a false teacher, or what? So do you think the disciples hadn't heard those things that people were saying about Jesus?
They did hear.
You did hear that.
Filtered it.
He was accused.
So they did hear. Do they share that with him?
No, they aren't going to say anything negative
Hmm.
about what other people have said.
Hmm. Interesting.
I think
It is.
And then Jesus, I mean, he kind of seeds his first question. Who do people say that, he didn't say, who do people say that I am? Right? What was it he asked?
what do you?
Well, no, he does ask that in
People
just a
say that the
second.
Son of Man is.
This
I, the
first
Son of
question,
Man, am. The Son of Man.
yeah, who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am? So he threw in that
Mhm.
self-description
Mhm.
even as he asked that question. So might that tell us anything about Jesus?
In the first question, he gave them the answer to the second question.
Oh, wow.
Gave him a
Okay.
clue.
Yeah, that's
It's a
good.
mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of helped him out a little bit.
Yeah.
Son of Man, finish the sentence. Yeah.
So you see anything there about the way Jesus formed that question?
Maybe as he was opening up to wrong thoughts about himself, he was at the same time telling them, these people think these things, but I am the Messiah.
Hmm.
He wants out and he goes back, he goes out.
Well, and then, that second question. So this is what you guys are saying, or this is what they're saying. It gets a little bit more specific. So
If you want to leave it open.
what do we learn about Peter from the fact he's the one that that jumps in with the answer? What do you see there?
Could you repeat the question again?
So what do we learn about Peter from the fact that he's the one that jumps out there with the answer?
He received the revelation from the Holy Spirit or from Father God.
Yeah, we can see that from what Jesus said. Yeah.
It's not the first time Jesus has proclaimed himself to be the Messiah. I mean, several times he's said that he is, and his disciples, or some of his disciples, should be aware of it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you guys should know this. It's like, let's go back to Calculus 101 by doing the times tables. 1 times 1 equals 1.
It seems like Peter's always, now, well, I don't know always, but in this story, he's acting like a spokesperson for the group. So he needs to I answer for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And for once, he doesn't he doesn't open his mouth and stick his foot in it, right? So
And Jesus doesn't say, I'm not one of those. Who do you say I am?
oh yeah.
No, because he just says, well, who do you say I, the Son of Man, am? Are they the Son of Man? Were they the Son of Man? So, because, I mean, they could have said, well, yeah, we think you are Elijah. We think you are so-and-so. But with the response that Peter gives, and then what Jesus says after that, are we there yet? My Father in heaven has revealed this to you. That
Yeah.
pointing out, guess what? Your Father, my Father, your God is the one that's, teaching you.
Well, that makes me think, Marley, because I mean here, we've mentioned, I think it was Andrew that just said a second ago that, Jesus is, as he's been teaching these guys, he's been letting them know, hey, I'm this, I'm that. And yet here Jesus doesn't go, well, duh, finally one of you guys is getting it.
Mhm.
But instead, he says to Peter, flesh and blood didn't give this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. So, I mean, does it seem that Jesus is disappointed that they hadn't gotten this before?
No, seemed like he was glad.
I mean, Does it seem like he has a sense of God's timing of revelation from the way he responded here?
Yeah,
What do you see there, don't we?
it's from God. So yeah,
Okay, so he
So-
recognizes God's timing is usually
Yeah.
relatively good.
right.
So some might even say perfect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how else could Jesus have responded? I mean, the fact that Peter's the one that jumps out with the answer, nobody else says anything, and
Oh, you could have said, "Good job, Peter. You're so
Mhm.
smart."
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
praise him.
Yeah.
What about the rest of you?
yeah.
You agree with Peter?
Right.
So maybe they're all nodding.
We were probably all thinking that same answer.
Yeah, Johnny.
Yes, he could also have decided to build the rock on to build the church on top of him, which he did not do.
Okay, we're gonna talk about the whole building the church thing in a minute. So, and I did remember what I forgot to put in the introduction, so I knew it would come. But yeah, so
Can I backtrack for a moment?
sure, Dan.
Is there any significance to where they are? It seems very specific about where they are. Is that about this story, or does that seem to maybe be about like locating them for the next thing after this?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that's a very good observation because they're up north in Israel, outside of Israel. And so if anybody's hearing something, they're not going to get stoned for saying it.
Yeah. And do you see this kind of taking place in a more private setting as opposed to speaking out in front of a big crowd, you know, like he often
It
did?
seems like it.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think we can say thus saith the Lord, but that's a good question, Diane. And again, I don't know the answer to that. So
Have to know what happens next, possibly. Know that.
yeah. So Jesus uses Peter's surname, right? Simon, son of Jonah, Simon Bar Jonah. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And so before we get to this next part of the story, there is a place later on in the book of Acts where Gentiles start to come into the church, and that's a big part of what I'll be talking about on Sunday when I'm preaching the Colossians passage. But because that the mystery is, you know, that there's Gentiles in the church. That's us, you know, which is yeah. So that ought to be a whoop whoop, you know, pretty exciting thing. But as that began to happen, as Paul and Barnabas begin to see Gentiles come in and receive Christ, the Jews are going, well, yeah, you gotta be circumcised, and you gotta honor the Sabbath, and you got to keep all the rules and the Jewish dietary laws. And the guys are kind of going, not so sure about that, you know. And so they had a council, the Jerusalem Council. And in these councils, what would happen, and it's very similar to what we do today, as they met, the Jewish custom was the lowest guy on the totem pole would speak first. So that way they would get honest opinion from people, right? And then the guy with the most authority would speak last. So you had several people speaking. Then he had Paul and Barnabas speak, who at this point were still pretty low on the totem pole, right? As far as Acts went. And then Peter spoke. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's what I think. And then James, Jesus' half-brother, spoke. And James said, "It is my ruling that," they can't eat meat offered to idols, sacrificed to idols. They shouldn't drink blood. But other than that, there's just like minimal rules for people coming in. So Peter was there and spoke, but it was James that made the official ruling as far as what was going to happen. So in this next part of the story, Jesus said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail," some versions, overpower other versions against it. So based on what we see happen later in the book of Acts, when Jesus says, "You're Peter, you're the little rock, and on this rock I will build my church." What do you see there, Johnny?
Yes. Well, if you go back a little bit, the question that he had asked was, "Who do you say I am?" And when Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," he said, "Blessed are you." And over that rock, over that statement of faith of Jesus being the Christ, the Son of the living God, over that statement, I'm gonna build my church.
What do some of the rest of you see there? That's
I
interesting.
have a question though, because when he says, "Peter, you are the rock," right? Wait,
It does not.
no, what does it say? Just Peter and upon this rock.
Yes.
Is that the rock referring to Peter or the other rock referring to his word?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know.
Uh,
I think upon that statement, because later it says, and Hades will not prevail against it, not against him.
yeah.
I don't
So
know.
you are Peter, Petra, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it.
The church will not overcome the church. Okay.
So
Well, if
Yeah.
Peter means Petra, then what word is he using for rock?
Yeah.
Not Petra.
a little different, but Petra is like a little stone, which is Peter's, and it's Peter's nickname. Jesus gave nicknames, I think, to 2 people, maybe 3, in the New Testament. Peter's one of them.
Mhm.
Peter.
Well, wasn't it Peter at Pentecost? Was it Peter that's the one that gave the big speech?
Mhm.
And started people came to Christ because of what he was saying. I don't know.
So is Jesus saying the church is going to be built on Peter?
No, that's
No.
what the Catholics say.
That's a lousy foundation.
Well, but if you think about whenever, like even Paul, whenever they'd go out on their missionary trips, they would always defer back to Peter in Jerusalem and to the other apostles, before they, kept going. I think it's one we won't know till we get to heaven, because it's.
Well, based on what we see happen, you mentioned that, based on what we see happen in Acts 15, was Peter in the role at the Jerusalem Council, the first meeting of the church, all the church leaders?
Mhm.
Was Peter in the role of what we would term pope or bishop or overall leader?
No.
You said James, right?
Yeah, it was James that made the official ruling. So,
I would like to answer that question,
okay.
or at least try to. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. Later on, when Peter told Jesus, "Lord, You don't have to go and die. And Jesus said, get away from me, Satan. I don't think Jesus would tell that to somebody who was going to be the rock, which he was going to build his church on, which don't make it kind of a lousy church, but like it's a good church. The rock is the statement of faith of you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. That's my opinion.
In this story, not stories coming in the future, but in this story, what do you?
I don't, yeah. I know. I got nothing.
And I have a question when we're done with this question.
Okay.
How important is it, whether it be built on Peter's statement or Peter, because we can look back now and say, well, a lot of people that claimed Jesus as Lord denied him. And a lot of time, Peter's life reflects a rather unstable one.
Yeah.
And so in order just for arguing about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to decide this is what it means definitively, so much as how can I live my life so that Jesus will say something good about me.
Mm. Diane, now I want that ice cream. So it's just like, I
missed lunch.
What was your question, Diane?
Peter seems to have a little embellishment there. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Why not just the Son of God? Why is the living put in there? What do we learn about Peter that he, I would say, embellishes that a little bit instead of straightforward Son of God?
Yeah, I mean that's a good observation. It's not just, that he's talking about the fact that he is a ongoing God. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that tells us that there's a whole lot of the fake gods that have died, and the true God is a living God. So that's why she said the Son of the living God.
And when he says that the Father revealed this to him, obviously the Father wanted that to be,
Yeah. Yeah. What he didn't just come up with it. Yeah, that's
right.
good. Yeah, Mo.
Yeah, I don't really know the answer or why, but I think to me that has something to do with it. The statement of flesh didn't reveal this, but my Father in heaven. It wasn't something that Peter did a really good job and came up on his own. It was a revelation that was given to him by the Father in heaven. So
okay. Yeah. So it was
something to do with that rock or the statement.
So kind of going back to the statement Johnny made earlier about that it was the declaration of who Jesus was that God revealed to him. And so, yeah, I can see where that could be more of a, something added on there. Well, I need to move us along here just a little bit. So it says, the gates of Hades will not prevail against the church. So that means that as much as Hades attacks, they're not going to be able to win against the church. Is that what you see? Be careful.
Well, I sure do hope that's true,
No,
but
Andrew, no. Let them suffer for a minute.
Say that again. Say that again.
So it says the gates of Hades shall not overcome the church, right? Shall not overpower. So we see Hades, boy, they're coming, and but they're not going to get the victory.
Does it say shall not prevail against the church or against it?
Well, it's talking about the church. So
Okay.
What
Well,
what
when?
are our disciples going to see the church as?
yeah, this is the first time it's ever mentioned,
Mhm,
right? And Jesus doesn't give any.
mhm.
There's, they don't have a thesaurus. So
Is that the first time Jesus
the
mentioned
first
church?
mention of the church in the New Testament?
Oh, wow, interesting.
Hades will not be able to prevail against the idea that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. So if you believe that, then you're part of the church. And
Well, it says gates of Hades, right? So do you attack with gates?
No, gates are defensive.
Oh, so you attack gates.
Oh, okay. That
doesn't make sense. Why would gates attack the gates?
the gates of Hades will not prevail against it, but then maybe those gates will be flung open and
And hit.
go battle and win the battle. I don't know.
So who do you see being on the offensive here based on what Jesus says?
The church.
No, but it says the gates of Hades. So if you say gates are defensive, then it's Hades that's being. This is very confusing.
Gates won't.
So
Won't be able-
with gates, like if you're attacking a fort, every old movie that we've all seen, right? Where do the enemies attack when they're attacking a castle?
Mhm. The
The
gate.
gates. You have to open them. They can't be stoned.
Drawbridge.
It's the weaker
Right? And
point.
so that's the big defensive, right? That's
Well,
but you don't attack with gates.
well,
No.
So
No.
they're
Oh
not,
no, they're coming and they're bringing gates with them. And you never hear that.
That's
Maybe
why
something
this
we
is
don't know
so
about.
weird.
yeah, well, it seems like, the gates, if the gates aren't going to prevail, then that means they're going to crumble.
Crumble, yeah,
The church is going to win over
yeah.
what's there in Hades' protection, I guess.
Well, so
Be able
do
to
you see
go
the
on
church
through.
standing back going, oh, Hades is attacking us and we need to stand strong? Or do you see something else?
I think it's more as the church knocking those gates down. Because those gates are not going to prevail against the you might say the attack of the church upon it.
Because you said the gates of Hades will not overpower the church. It's so hard to picture
basically,
this
the
thing.
King James version, I think, and maybe the New King James says prevail against it, which in the Greek term there is a little, so the
Yeah.
idea is it won't be able to
knock it down.
win against it again. And so it seems like, based on the construction here, that the church is the one doing we're on the offensive
Well,
against
does
the
it,
kingdom of darkness.
John, the light will not be able to overpower.
Yeah.
I mean, the darkness won't overpower the
Yeah.
light. I forget
Yeah.
which verse I'm talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
that would make sense.
So just
Yeah, so this is like every TV show where the buff alpha male gets to knock in the door in the police thing.
yeah, with the big log thing.
Yeah,
So-
or a shoulder, which is
Yeah.
wildly
or
unrealistic.
kick it open, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a triple lock on that, and you're gonna kick it open. That's with
Yeah.
your bionic leg. So, well, in this first part of the story, we saw that Jesus recognized that what Peter had gleaned, what Peter had understood about him being the Messiah, that it wasn't something he just figured out for himself, but rather it was a revelation from God, right? That it's right there, but it took, I mean, he even used the title Son of Man, but he's going, yeah, God's the one that revealed this to you. I mean, and we know that the canon of Scripture is completed, yada yada, but does God still reveal things to his people today? I mean, is that still going on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So what does that, what does that look like?
Can I share a story of something that happened the other day?
Yes, you can, but it needs to be a paragraph and not a chapter.
Okay. All righty.
I'd like to share a story instead, John, if I could.
Go ahead.
My friend Pepe, which is where Jonathan is ministering right now. My friend Pepe wanted to start a rehab for people and didn't really know what to do. But he started going out to different streets and corners with sandwiches and tamales and coffee, and just giving it to people that he knew were street people on drugs or whatnot. And he just continued to do that and to work with a group of people and just working with them just a little bit at a time. And then he just started to promote the idea that he wanted to have a full-time rehab center. He also went to many different rehab centers to learn what to do. And all of a sudden, a group of Christians that he worked with while he was illegally in America gave him money to buy the piece of property they have right now. And then they started meeting there, and he continued to go out to the streets to give out tamales and everything else. And then they got money to build the wall and to build a building, and then he started to take people in. And it's very interesting. His center is different than every other center in the fact that he'll take anybody, almost anybody, whether they can pay or not, and trust the Lord for it. And he's changed lots of lives. And my son ministers there. And so you think, well, here's the gates of Hades holding on to these drug addict people. And here's this guy that is impunctual and unorganized and everything else that I am also, because I'm one of his mentors, breaking down parts of the gates of hell that he felt he was called to attack and destroy, and changing the lives of 10 or 15 men at a time over the course of 3 months. So that's really interesting to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a question there, Andrew, because it just something that popped into my head. It's got nothing to do with the story here, but so when somebody like that gets a piece of property or getting ready to build a house, build the wall first or build the house first?
Build the wall first, of course.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
why would you not build the wall first? Why would you just leave all that stuff there without it?
I'm wondering. Just
That's true.
Don't they do that in America? Don't you all put up a big fence first so that?
When they were building my mother-in-law's house and we drove by, there's this huge pile of lumber that sat out in front of her house for 2 or 3 days. I thought, nowhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere else in the world.
Nowhere else in the world would you do that. And probably I doubt they do that in New York City. Or
I'd have to ask President Trump about that one. I don't know.
Other big cities in town, even Philly, that you could get away with doing that.
Well, I hope, Jonathan, you can forgive me for jumping in front of you like that, but Anyway, it's just kind of interesting how he did that one step at a time. It was not a big circus or anything else, but that was his gate that he had to take, and he took it.
Well, I love that one step at a time. You know, when we think about the revelation of God, I mean, does God usually give us the big picture, or does he usually just ask for one step of obedience?
Yeah.
Mhm.
One step.
Forgot the big picture. I don't know if you're gonna have any kind of picture. It's gotta get half a step at a time.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, she used to be she had been a stripper, and then she had a child, decided I'm not going to strip anymore, so she got out of that. But then she became a Christian, started going to church, and then she started what was called strip church, going into the strip clubs and ministering to the women, and even having little church services there. They let them, and the fact that the owners allowed her to go in there with other women, you know, it was like what a testimony to how God just, you know, you're not going to stop me, I'm coming in. And how many, you know, women that she was able to minister to, and many of them, you know, came out of that life, and, you know, so yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, we've done a little bit of that here previously. So yeah, Johnny.
Yes, can I use 1 minute to share what I wanted to say? Oh, if we don't have time, that's okay.
Yeah, you can.
Alrighty, so I was at the other center and I called somebody and I went showing him around to everybody else. And the guy who I called, he had met a lot of people. So when he went to go talk to one of the ministers who didn't know anything about him, he said, "Hey, I've been praying for you." And he started like saying stuff about his life that he didn't know and that even I didn't know. And it just made him tear.
Yeah.
And it was like a revelation from God. Thank you. That was 1 minute.
Yeah, you did really good. Yeah, as a pastor, I've had that experience where God's given me revelation about somebody's life or situation, and was terrifying to them, a little disconcerting to me, to be real honest. So, we know as we see that Jesus recognizes that it was the Father that was revealing things. I mean, how might that impact our ministry today as we're reaching out to people that don't necessarily know the Lord? Yeah, Cheryl.
It makes me realize that Jesus is the one that's gonna bring the word to the person's heart with the revelation that they need to have that faith. And it helps me to rest, but to also, well, not rest, totally rest, but I mean, in a way, rest in that I don't have to manipulate them or anything, but also not rest in asking God to reveal himself. And so to those people.
Yeah, Cheryl, you made me think. I need to rest in my efforts of trying to pound it into them, but I need to not let God rest. I just need to bug him. I need to bug him and bug him and bug him in prayer, right? Kind of what Jesus is talking about with with the persistent widow.
Yeah.
Diane, were you going to say something?
Just different gospel stories that I've been reading and storing lately. I see that it's clear everywhere that Jesus is communicating that he is the Son of God. And Muslims are steadfast in saying, "Oh, Jesus never said that." I'm like, and I'm just thinking, it's just everywhere. If it could be like pancake syrup at an IHOP, it's just everywhere.
And I was doing the Thomas story, and that's Thomas's declaration, my Lord and my God. And there's no correction, right? If somebody gets that wrong, it's only polite and non-heretical to correct them if they're wrong. And it's like it's everywhere. And this thing of it's not my job to make people see. It's my job to place it there and let God reveal to them what is just overly abundant in so many places.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey,
And I think also,
yeah, go ahead,
oh,
Vivi.
in the big, at first I thought, oh, if God, even Jesus said, oh, flesh and blood does not reveal, only my Father in heaven. So why did Jesus bother telling them so many times before? That was my, my very wicked thought first. But then as I process with you guys, like, yeah, even Jesus was trying to tell them. He knows that the Father is going to reveal to them, but it didn't prevent Jesus from, I'm just gonna wait until the Father reveal to you. I'm not gonna tell you anymore. Jesus still do that. So how much more we should also do the same.
Yeah, we need to share the truth and then trust the Lord to bring it to bring it to life.
Yeah,
we can
oftentimes that
say-
revelation is those seeds that were planted along the way, and the revelation is like you could now they can see how God was working.
Yes.
They're just revealing right away, and that's really in my life seeing that.
Yeah. I want to do a commercial here. There are a series of books. The first one was Miraculous Movements by a guy named Jerry Truesdale, Trousdale. He was a keynote speaker at the ION conference several years back, and I've got a whole story that goes along with that. But there's a series of 4 books that are, talking about discovery Bible studies. They use orality in their ministry. They use Bible stories different than what we would do, and in some ways a little too surfacey, for me to be content with. But one of the ministries they've been involved with has baptized over 1 million Muslims in the last 10 years. Baptized, not led to Christ, but baptized, that's a huge step, right? So God has been using us in a tremendous way. This book just came out on audio in the last week. So if you ever have if you are ever looking on Kindle, or I think Christian Audio actually has this book. I listened.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called Miraculous Movements.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and post it on here.
I know. I think maybe I shared that. But I don't know.
There you go. So that way you guys can copy it and paste it. But it's just some. If you're looking for a way to encourage you, and it talks a lot about prayer and the steps that they've used to plant these studies. We're actually looking at doing something along those lines here in Lexington among some internationals that God's allowed us to get plugged into. But anytime I can find those decent resources, I like to share that. Well, our story is in Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 18. And it was hard for me to condense this story down, but I knew if we had much more, it would take us in a lot of different places. And so I really want to appreciate you guys helping me with this, because you've shown me a couple of things I'll need to do on Sunday. So